Hello, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. So, welcome to this impromptu episode 38 of Teh Tarik with Walid. And I just figured that we should have a discussion on the most important political development in Singapore of the past few years. One of the most important announcements in our history. The announcement that Minister Lawrence Wong is PM designate, and what does that mean, and what we can expect, and what are the issues, and what do people feel about him. And I thought I didn't have anybody on lined up, but there were a few people who said they wanted to come on. So maybe we'll just do this. I'll just see whoever sends me a request, and then we can have like 5 to 10 minutes of discussions with that person, and then somebody else who wants to send in a request, you guys can go ahead, and then so the first person will leave, and then the next person will come, and so on. So this is like a meet the people session for Teh Tarik with Walid, and then you can share your thoughts, and you can ask questions, and I can ask you questions as well. Okay, so Trevor, I've never met you before. You want to introduce yourself first?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Hi. I'm Trevor Teh. I'm 25 this year. I'm studying international relations at SIM Global, UOL, University of London.
Okay. Nice.
Dr. Felix was my international relations lecturer.
Okay. So you were in good hands. Yeah. So, Saishwa?
Yes, so I'm Saishwa. I'm currently year 3. I think Prof, we did a Malaysian politics dialogue, I think in September, but just a few months back. Yeah, we met there. Yeah.
Yes, you're at NUS, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what do you guys think? What are people talking about, or what are people saying on the grapevine about Lawrence Wong becoming PM?
Okay, I should go first. Okay. I honestly think I kind of expected at this point. So I think given the precedent of the finance minister usually being either DPM or PM, I thought it was sort of a clear indicator that he was somewhat a front runner. And especially with the budget speech, if you notice the last 10 to 15 minutes, it felt like a mini National Day rally. So yeah. Yes, that's his audition tape. He's showing off now, and it's going to happen. Yeah.
Right. How about you, Trevor?
I think for me, I guess one of the key moments was, for example, I think last year in June, I can't remember the content of the speech, but it was when he gave that speech on race, which was, I think, kind of like way out of his portfolio of COVID finance. I think at that point, I think he's starting to come out of that minister box, so to speak, and then speaking beyond his portfolio. So I think that was one key moment. But I think what's also clear is what he didn't do compared to maybe the two others. Like, I think Ong Yi Kang and Chun Sing maybe have said and done things that may have been controversial. Sorry, can you hear me? May have done
can.
certain controversial things.
So what was it that Minister Ong did that was controversial?
I don't know. I guess the one that comes to mind was the one on remember that one where he cited Alfian Saad's
right.
Maybe that's one. Then Chun Sing, there was a couple of instances, I guess. But I guess Lawrence didn't end up in those situations. So but maybe I'm overplaying this aspect. But I think the speech on race, I think at that point I would say that is quite a big moment for him. Yeah, maybe putting all those stuff aside.
No, I agree. I think that as in that was a big moment, as in that was a signal, and I also think, and he did pretty okay in that as well, right? So by the way, if you guys just joined us, so this is like a meet the people session, okay? So every 10 minutes we are gonna rotate guests. So whoever wants to join, please comment in the comment section, right? Otherwise, the two of them will be here the whole time. So if you want to come on, just type it there. Okay, so how do younger people feel about Lawrence Wong?
Okay, I met Lawrence Wong before in the dialogue. And
Now we're just flexing, is it?
no,
So I met Chun Chun Sing is my neighbor.
no, but honestly, I think he's a very people-centric person, and he's, from the interactions I had, he's quite a good listener. So I get the vibe that people actually like him a lot as a person, and I think that's part of it. And I think looking at his social media presence, especially in the last year, you can tell that he's really trying to sort of change people's perception of him, make him more likable, and especially his TikTok is getting a million views, and it shows that.
And I cannot understand. It's literally him walking, taking off the mask, and he got like what, few 100,000. Like it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, but
it's literally a man walking, taking off his mask, putting back on, and like this. But you know, TikTok is a different world. Yeah.
But it shows that he's very much in touch with young people and their interests. Finding the best way to find new ways in order to engage and connect with them. And because of that, I think it's going to increase sort of online presence and engagement. And so in the eye of the public, especially young people, my friends, they like him much more as well. And I think that's also a significant reason in why he as one of those top 2 picks.
Okay, so Trevor, is that consistent with what your friends think as well?
To be honest, I don't. I mean, at least my circle of friends. I mean, it's not like every other day they're talking about, what did Lawrence do?
Why?
Media.
Why are they not talking about it every other day?
I mean, it might come up, but it's not like, hey, did you see Lawrence do that video? No, I guess, I mean, I don't know whether it's just my circle, but it didn't come up. As in, for me, I myself, maybe I'm not so like, I don't overly focus on the social media aspect. Yeah, so maybe I'm a bit too traditional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you're 25, right?
Didn't say anything. Yeah, didn't say anything about that walk or.
No, what about him in general? What's the vibe? Yeah. What's the vibe?
I think when I discussed with my classmates, I guess the vibe is quite okay lah. I mean, there's no like strong. At least when I talk to my friends, there's no strong negative like, but you know, he did this and I'm quite not happy with that. No, there's no like negatives in the conversation. So like, I guess maybe I would say I see him and maybe some of my peers see him as a steady pair of hands kind of person. No negatives coming out lah. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting because what you described was exactly what somebody else texted me just now. Like they say they have, and it's quite telling also. In a neutral way, it's quite telling that when people say, "Oh, Lawrence Wong," I don't think he has any screw ups or no. Lawrence Wong, I mean, he's not likable. Instead of, "Oh, he's so likable," or "He's so this," right? It's quite telling, but I guess that's also reflective of how he, in a way, he sort of came out of nowhere, right? Like because of, he probably wouldn't have been prime minister without COVID, right? Yeah. He wasn't in the top 2 candidates that were talked about. In fact, he wasn't the DPM candidate prior to this, right? It was DPM Hing and Minister Chan Chun Sing. So I guess a lot of people still do not know, most Singaporeans still do not know much about him, which is why I think there were a few articles in the media today trying to humanize Minister Lawrence Wong about how he plays guitar and whatever. There are 8 things about him and he's a guitar player, right? Because, you know, Singaporeans need those really useful information, right? And our mainstream media always living up to expectations. Yeah. So, what do you want or expect to see from the 4G? Well, the moment they assume leadership positions, as in when they are in charge, not now. I mean, they are already assuming leadership positions, but when they are actually in charge, what do you expect to see, or what do you want to see? Maybe those are 2 different questions.
I think I would expect much more engagement with people. I think that's something we're seeing a lot as of late. Especially as they begin to adopt more of social media platforms, you will see much more frequent engagement, regular engagement, and to actually hear people out much more often. So I would assume that would become a norm under the 4G, especially as they begin to adopt technology much more. So yeah, I think that's something I'll expect.
Yeah. So somebody said we can definitely expect more TikToks, and I oh my god, I hope not, man. But I mean, unfortunately, we will see more. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that ship had sailed. So yeah, Trevor.
Expectations for Lawrence Wong. I guess I didn't really have much specifically, but I guess what I do have is hope is that going forward, when in the kind of politics that the PAP practices, especially say in a general election campaign, I mean I hope that he tries to have a strategy where at least the PAP doesn't try to go too negative. Practice a kind of although it's very cliche to say this, kinder, gentler.
Right.
Kinder,
So
gentler, but more built on
so not
reason.
GE 2020. Yeah. So no,
Use reason to
less
convey your
draconian
message.
measures and less
More
harshness
taman lah.
towards.
More taman kind of
more taman
communication.
and less who. Okay, don't need to say less who. Okay, just
Okay.
more taman.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So anything else you wanted to say? Dr. Elvin Ong wants to join as well. Anything you guys want to get off your chests?
Okay, I think just one.
Yes, carry on, session.
Quite curious to see how the shuffle will come along, the cabinet shuffle. Like, honestly, I'm not sure how they can shuffle, but considering the most recent one was last year. So I'm interested to see what will happen with that, and I think we have a clear indicator of maybe whether anyone else will become a DPM going forward, especially once Lawrence Wong becomes PM.
Any preference for you?
Okay, I think the Heng Swee Keat will take a step back. That's what I think happened. And hot take, I think Shan Mukum will be one of the DPM together with Ong Ye Kang. Yeah, so that's what I think will happen.
Okay.
Can I just?
Yeah, carry on, Trevor.
I guess a few things on my chest. I would say I think one issue he should try to move a bit more, make more moves on. I'm not sure whether that means changing the minister. I think it's housing. When it comes to public housing, I mean some people I spoke to felt that for example the current housing minister may not be pushing hard enough, like in terms of so I mean this is what some people have told me, so I'm not sure.
In terms of what?
Like the sense I get, again, this coming from one person, I don't know how reflective this is, but one person someone told me that he's not proactive enough, the person in charge of housing, the minister in charge of housing. So I'm not sure. I mean, could be one person's view, but I think that's one. I think the second one is what I would be interested to see or know is so housing is one. I think the second one is whether he would call a snap election or would he try to get a personal mandate as soon as he can, or would he run out the term to 25?
I wanted to talk about those two things that you guys raised as well, so probably I'll address it later. So the next election and the 3G in the 4G cabinet. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, boys.
Yeah.
Is it possible for you guys to leave the conversation? Yes. Because if I end,
how to do this.
Okay. Let's try. We are figuring this out. So I'll invite Dr. Elvin Ong. He is a political scientist from NUS. He said he wanted to come on. And if anybody else wants to come on, please feel free to type in the chat. By the way, Hannes, I just took booster, so I cannot play next Friday. Hi, Elvin. Thank you for joining me. What is it that you wanted to get off your chest?
I don't really have anything particular to get off my chest. I was just thinking about, like, it's quite revealing. The PMD's press statement was quite revealing about the selection process. He mentioned that it was the cabinet who sort of voted on who would be the next prime minister, and there was overwhelming majority support for him. And so, of course, the question is, how overwhelming is overwhelming majority support? And also in terms of the idea that it wasn't selected by the rest of the 4G leaders, but it was selected by the cabinet. And so there's a
but they did say it wasn't the I think the PM and SM were not consulted, but it was the 4G team that
the rest of the rest of the cabinet includes a lot of non-4G leaders, right? So
yes,
for example,
correct. Yeah,
Minister,
and interestingly also, the way the phrasing of these things are sometimes revealing also, right? So overwhelming majority, meaning overwhelming majority had Lawrence as first choice, or overwhelming majority said, oh, we are okay with Lawrence, we are also okay with this, right? This. So it seems, I mean, I did look at it, and the phrasing seemed a little vague, right? But I would say it's a positive step, right, that they have finally announced, because I feel before this, like everything that they did, right, people tended to interpret it rightly or wrongly through the lens of this leadership tussle, if I could call it that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good that they have clarified on paper what is the particular process, and if necessary, this would be seen as a particular benchmark for future leadership successions if necessary. Previously, Goh Chok Tong had mentioned that when he was transitioning to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, he tried to institute a certain process, right? But it wasn't really on paper. It wasn't mentioned directly. I think he vaguely mentioned that there was some sort of process in Patir, the PAP party newsletter. And even the process from Mr. Lee Kuan Yew to Minister Goh Chok Tong, that was kind of revealed in his book, in his biography, right? So those were not really explicitly written down, but now we see the process written down as written by PM.
You're right. So it's written in the press statement, right? But at the end of the day, the PM still has the power to choose, right? If he so wish, like all three of them.
Of course, it could be.
But they didn't. They chose to institute certain things because it's not in the party constitution, for instance, that they have to choose it in a particular way.
Definitely not in the party constitution. But of course, the Prime Minister's choice was not solicited, and the SM choice was not solicited. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Prime Minister doesn't have influence,
of course,
over the choice, right?
Or the Prime Minister doesn't have a preference also, right? I mean, it cannot be, right, that the Prime Minister doesn't have influence. But I think it was in line with what ASM Go tried to do also, right? Basically letting the next generation choose, and basically what Lee Kuan Yew did as well, right? So and Lee Kuan Yew was even more explicit, right? His choice wasn't Goh Chok Tong, right? But he wanted, and which I think is a smart thing to do, because ultimately the 4G has to contend with the leader, right? So now what happens, Elvin? So Shi Hui asked what could be key issues to contend with, right? And there are two ways to think about this, right? One is long term. What are the key issues to contend with for Minister Lawrence Wong? But secondly, right, even more short term than that, right? There were three contenders and there is one winner, right? So I mean that's the only way we can view it, right? So what happens to the other two, and what happens to the party dynamics now?
Yeah, so key question, of course, is who will be the deputy to Lawrence Wong? And there are two ways to look at it. Either they could kick that question down the road to the Central Executive Committee elections at the end of this year for the PAP, or in the upcoming cabinet reshuffle, they could announce, right? So if Lawrence Wong is one of the DPMs, that another DPM could be seen as his deputy if it's a 4G leader.
Right.
If the other DPM is not a 4G leader, then they could be potentially kicking it down the road. In terms of that would be the key short-term issue. I see who is the next deputy, and of course the cabinet lineup that is going to be changed. That will be pretty intriguing as well, because we should expect some senior ministers to either step down. And I think it's time for some senior ministers to step down.
Yeah, and I think if and when Minister Lawrence Wong takes over as well, I do think PM Lee would probably be in the cabinet still, probably as senior minister. And I think, I actually think many Singaporeans would welcome that. The other thing is, I think Minister Shanmugam is going to be in the cabinet as well, right?
Of course. So if there are any retirements, right, there may be some retirements, but some will still stay, right?
For sure,
And amongst the retirements, I don't think Minister Shanmugam will be amongst the retirements.
Yeah, and in fact, I think even when Lawrence becomes PM, I think Minister Shan will still be there. And there will be, they will still need a couple of senior figures
in hands to guide cabinet.
Yeah,
and things like
absolutely, yeah. So,
but in one more point is, in the medium to longer term, I actually don't think it's so much about who are the political leaders. I think a key issue in the next 2 to 3 years approaching the elections will be in terms of economics, in terms of inflation, in terms of whether people's wages are rising.
GST.
In GST, right? If people feel that prices are rising, their wages are declining in real terms, the quality of life decreases, then there might be, no matter who that new leadership might be, that could be an issue for having more PAP votes, right? So I think how the economy is doing in translation into people's wages and inflation control will be a key issue in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we really think about it, right, what actually are substantive differences between Ministers Lawrence Wong, Chan Chun Sing, and Ong Ye Kung, right? Other than they all have their own style, right? Which matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, right? Because politics a lot of times is also about optics, right? But ideologically, philosophically, policy-wise, right? Are there really important substantive differences? I would say not really. Of course, there will be differences, like there will be differences between any two human beings. But on the core issues, I do not think there are major differences. What do you think?
I think from the budget speech, just inferring from the budget speech that Mr. Lawrence Wong gave, he might be a little bit more inclined towards more progressive stances on things like income inequality. So being willing to raise taxes on the rich, being more willing to provide more distribution.
Yeah. Do you think that's a Lawrence Wong thing, or do you think the 4G has no choice but to move left economically? They probably are not going to move left politically anytime soon. Well, I hope they do. But economically, I don't think they have a choice, right? So whether it's Ong Ye Kung or Chan Chun Sing, they probably would have to do that because of whatever. Yeah.
They probably all have to do that, but I think it's a matter of degree rather than type, right? So amongst the three of them, my inference from their speeches is that Lawrence Wong is probably more in the middle of their degree of stance towards redistribution and raising taxes on the rich and imposing a carbon tax, that sort of thing. Of course, we can't predict what will Chan Chun Sing implement if he was a finance minister. We can't predict what will Ong Ye Kung implement if he was a finance minister. But my sense is that Minister Chan Chun Sing is a little bit more pro-business, perhaps, given his experience in Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So, by the way, anybody else who wants to join, please feel free to type in the comments, right? So, what is one thing you would want to see from the 4G, Elvin?
One thing I would like to see from the 4G is actually more progressive tax policies in terms of the income inequality, actually.
More so than now?
Oh, definitely. I think in terms of the budget that was presented just a couple of months ago, although there was a rise in income tax, although there was rise in property tax for the rich, I think the scope and degree of increase could have been more, rather than just the small 1 to 2% increase. That really seemed like somewhat symbolic increases to me and not really substantive increases with real bite, right? And if we had a little bit more substantive increases in real bite, we could have more revenue intake to deal with redistribution and better policies for the low income. So economics is something that I think we can see if there's a subtle shift in terms of the economic model.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think there have been gradual, perhaps glacial, but it's discernible movements leftwards economically, at least. I think for sure. Anything else you wanted to add, Elvin, or get off your chest?
Nothing much.
Probably
Who do you think will be
the media has been contacting you, right, for comments.
So you as well, actually. Who would you want to be the deputy of?
Yeah, I am a fan of Chun Sing, as you know, right? I'm probably in the minority of Singaporeans who. So I think he probably would be. And in the first place, he was supposed to be deputy to DPM Heng also, right? I think he probably is the preferred choice of many important figures within the PAP as well. Not the majority, but many important figures. And I think the DPM role probably suits him currently, because I think his street cred is not that high with the average Singaporean. So and to be PM, where you're going to be public facing, you're going to sell a lot of policies to the people, right? You need to be even the best case scenario is you are very liked and you are likable. But if not, you cannot be disliked, right? You need to be at least tolerated. Like somebody said to me just now, "Oh, Lawrence Wong, my reaction was meh." And that's not such a bad thing, as long as, oh my God, I don't want him to be PM. Like, okay, if he's PM, I'm okay with it. If he's not PM, I'm okay with it. I guess that's pretty all right. An all right situation for Lawrence Wong. At least all right starting point, right? Of course, I think he needs to. I think the 4G as a whole needs to reconnect with the ground. Yeah. So not just him. I think the 4G as a whole.
What do you mean by reconnecting with the ground?
So I do think that it's not the first time, because sometimes we like to romanticize the past also, right? So, and we think of the PAP, and we have a very presentist point of view, and we think that, oh, now is the worst time for the PAP. Whereas even if you look at Lee Kuan Yew's final 2 elections, his vote share was on the decline. Even PM Lee's vote shares was on the decline, have been on the decline other than 2015, of course. The party as a whole, not him personally. But I do feel that there is a difference in terms of the criticisms directed towards the 4G. In the past, right, I don't think people ever doubted the PAP's competence, right? Their criticisms would be, oh, they're so authoritarian, oh, they're so harsh, but nobody says that Lee Kuan Yew or Goh Chok Tong or PM Lee or Minister Shanmugam, right? For all the criticisms people, especially the more liberal people, put forth against him, they've never questioned his competence, So and I do feel there is an element which is different for the 4G, and that's why you hear things like, oh, the 4G don't know what they're doing, they're flip-flopping this whole time, partly unfairly because of the circumstances of COVID, but partly because they have been sending mixed messages as well. Right, so I do feel that this line of criticism towards the PAP is probably new, and they need to reconnect with the ground to overcome that. What do you think?
Well, so you say that currently the 4G leadership have a problem with public perception of their competence.
I do think
And
so. A comparative,
Right.
com-
And
compara-
if there's a public perception problem of their competence, so they need to reconnect with the ground to better their public perception. So would you see, but that assumes that that's a perception problem, not a real competence problem.
yeah. So it could be both, right? But even if it's even if it's not just a perception problem, they can still try to overcome some of the perceptions, right? So they can still come there, right? I mean, so it could be also, but again, when PM Lee was taking over, there were similar perceptions as well, right? Right. So maybe all the 4G need is time, and maybe that's true as well. Yeah.
True. Time to allow their policies to filter through, to be implemented,
and to
actually show
and to come into their own. Right now, they are still in the shadow of the 3G, right? So I do think that, to be fair, and I think most reasonable people, you don't want Lawrence Wong to fail, right? Because if he succeeds, Singapore succeeds, right, as a PM. So we don't want that. We don't want them to fail. So hopefully, maybe I think they need to be given some time. But the other thing also, Minister Lawrence Wong has been in cabinet. He's been in cabinet for 10 years, plus minus, and already announced as Prime Minister, right? So whereas previously, they had a longer runway, so to speak, right? But that longer runway thing is also a very Singaporean thing. In most countries, right? In other countries, right? Today you're the leader of the opposition, tomorrow you immediately, like, no government experience at all. And the countries do not crumble or anything, because assuming you still have a good enough civil service that you know about. Your wife is also a competent civil servant, right? So, and the civil service is pretty good also. But that doesn't mean the leadership doesn't matter. It matters as well. So what do you think? Do you think I'm right about how people perceive the 4G, and there's a difference?
I do think that there could be a perception issue about their competence. And to the extent that if there is this perception issue, the question is, why is there such a perception issue, and how they can go about doing it. And I think there could be two reasons why they have such a perception issue. Number one is they are still not given enough responsibility to implement what they want to do, right? So the next cabinet reshuffle will therefore be very important, because hopefully we'll see more 4G leaders stepping up, taking more responsibilities, taking more portfolios to implement what they want to do, and we can see the fruits of what they are doing.
Which ones specifically you want the 4G to take over?
I think defense is a particular area. Minister Ng has been there for a very long time. Maybe trade and industry is another important area as well. We need to potentially rethink our economic model. So those would be two particular areas that I think the 4G could potentially really stamp their mark, right?
Right. So Arun says MHA or main law. Well, I mean, that's not gonna happen. Not now.
Maybe
not
now,
right? Oh, you think so?
It could be possible, right? Currently, Minister Elvin Ong, he is Minister for Community.
MCCY. Yeah.
MCCY. Of course, he has a legal background, so he could be well positioned to take over as Minister for Law. So that is possible as well. And we should also see some of the senior ministers of state getting promoted.
Yeah, so you're talking about what? So somebody was asking, what about the 5G? Probably you'll see some of them being promoted as well. I don't know whether full ministerial positions, but you'll see some movements in that regard as well, right? Yeah, so foreign affairs, probably foreign affairs is something.
Foreign affairs, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan has done a pretty good job, I would say. So the question is, will he move to a different portfolio? Will he stay, or will someone take over him in terms of foreign affairs?
Yeah.
If we really want to take this 4G leadership stamping their mark for the next general election very seriously, right? Then one could argue to say that, maybe we need a new Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
But that is dependent on, of course, like the numbers of senior hands retiring, how many senior hands you want to still maintain in the cabinet to provide a guiding hand, that sort of thing. So I think that balance is definitely up to PMD to decide.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So there's this comment by Fiakra. Thoughts about Lawrence's current position in the Central Executive Committee, which is quite low down according to Fiakra, and the likelihood of him suddenly being put up at Assistant Secgen. Well, what I would say is, because the CEC is really about the party's own choices, right? And it tells us what the party is thinking, and it also is partly reflective of how Minister Lawrence Wong has almost accidentally being put in this position because of COVID. I think without that, for sure, he wouldn't have been. I'm pretty confident. In fact, he wasn't even in the top 2 in the previous one, right? So, but now, because circumstances have changed, so the CEC position will change as well. But the fact that he wasn't in the top position showed that initially the party didn't think that he was going to be the Prime Minister. What do you think, Elvin?
Yeah, I think the CEC of the AP is kind of like a separate body and separate decision-making field, right? I think in Singapore, the real power lies within the cabinet. And the CEC positions are kind of formalization of that power into the People's Action Party's hierarchy.
Right.
So
interesting, because Bilvia Singh would say that the CEC is more important than the cabinet. That's interesting. Yeah. So there's a comment by Shout for Joy. Given this new line of criticism, I missed this comment. So which line of criticism? So about the competence. How will WP and other opposition parties position themselves?
I think we got to really see how the next cabinet lines up, right? And if they are given a significant runway to stamp their mark on different policies in Singapore. How the WP will line up, I think the opposition parties will be pretty reactive to whatever policies that the PAP puts out. Like it or not,
right.
The PAP sets the agenda.
Yeah,
right, about
absolutely.
What issues to solve throughout the rest of the calendar year. And
Absolutely.
so what WP can do is to respond as much as best as they can in terms of providing new ideas, alternative ideas to whatever PAP puts on the plate.
Right.
It is very difficult for the opposition parties to drive the talk, to drive the agenda about what people discuss on a day-to-day basis. So unfortunately, you'll be pretty responsive.
Yeah. So there's a question by somebody you and I know, Elvin, Harry's Coffin, and he said he asked, how will Wong deal with growing desires for a more competitive political arena and democratic accountability? Will he also go after the WP and take a knuckle duster's approach to opposition? Right. So, I mean, I hope not. I think even Trevor earlier said that this is one thing that he wishes. And I think post GE 2020, right, Minister Chun and senior PAP leaders actually, I think, made the right noises or sounds about how younger people think differently, and we also need to move. And even Dr. Shashi Jayakumar, whose book I think is an excellent book, The History of PAP. I really recommend it.
I haven't actually read that.
Oh, you haven't read it? Oh, it's superb. As in, it's really a good documentation of the book. And he mentioned that, in GE 2020, he did see something different, right? It's not that the PAP has not, his popularity has not waned before, but the issues on which they were criticized, like with the justice and fairness, seem quite different in 2020, right? So I would say, I hope the 4G moves there, but I haven't seen anything in the past couple of years to think that they would actually do it, right? In fact, you almost saw also during the the whole thing with the COP and Parliament, right? You saw even 4G ministers trying to position themselves as the heart man, heart woman, right? But again, that also could be partly because they're still in the shadow of the 3G, right? So once they are outside the shadow of the 4G, I mean, I hope that they will move there. I have not seen anything to suggest that, but you know, I always have hope. What do you think, Elvin?
I think I don't think it's necessarily correct to say that there's growing desires for more competitive political era.
Yeah, we shouldn't overstate that. Yeah,
yeah.
shouldn't overstate
I think
that.
a more nuanced approach would be, I think people are looking for a more fair playing field.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for any kind of electoral competition to proceed on a fair, rules-based basis, right?
Yeah.
So there may be some negative campaigning that is kind of a fact of political life, but maybe people are looking for a little bit less negative political campaigning, a little bit more competition based on the substance of policies, rather than accusations of so-called integrity, or so-called honesty. But of course, at the end of the day, the PAP, I feel, has particular red lines. And of course, the whole lying in Parliament issue, it was a red line which the PAP would not take lying down, right?
Yeah, and I think rightly so, right? It's not a trivial issue, right? Lying in Parliament. I mean, you can quibble. I think both of us have said stuff on how the whole affair was handled after that, but just on that particular issue itself, I think a lot of reasonable people would not have an issue with taking a person who lies in Parliament, no matter how good the intentions are, right? Parliament is not coffee shop talk, right? It's not like, oh, you and I talking and then we just speak in hyperboles and so on. Yeah. So there are so many questions here, and I see Kenneth Paul Tan has joined us also. I don't know whether he wants to come on live.
Please, Prof. Kenneth Paul Tan,
Prof,
please,
yes, Prof Tan,
us.
if you want, please join us. So there's a question by Debbie. Will the PAP just become more elitist? And do you think Lawrence Wong can overcome this? And his background is also not too elitist, right? As in Tanjong Katong Secondary, I believe. Was it Tanjong Katong Secondary? Yeah.
Yes,
so,
Tanjong. I'm surprised that I checked the websites of Tanjong Katong Secondary and VJC, and none of them had Minister Lawrence Wong's face plastered on the front page.
Right, but now they will. I think they will. You know. Yeah. So I mean, even before this, so you saw his picture wasn't even when his finance minister.
Was
Interesting.
Not on the website.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so they should. So what do you think? Do you think this elitism is so inbaked?
I don't think it's a matter of PAP elitism per se. I think fundamentally, if you look at the candidates that the PAP puts up, right? Maybe with Minister Lawrence Wong at the helm, maybe they will put in a more interesting, diverse set of candidates. But of course, the people that they put up will still be people who will be doing well in society. Lawyers, professionals, doctors, people good at the private sector, public sector, so on and so forth. So, and we should welcome good people to join politics and join government, right? So, to that extent, like, you can't say that, oh, we bring in good people and therefore you could just call them elitists. I think
right. So elites do not mean elitist, right? Because elitist is a mindset more than anything else.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, it's not so much about the type of people.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's a couple. I don't know what Arvin's question is. Do you think they're emphasizing too much on the idea of a 4G when we are already moving towards a 5G world? Are we moving towards a 5G world? Like, what is
What's a
this?
5G world?
What does this 5G world look like? So I'm not sure whether I understand the question. So, will Lawrence Wong's Mandarin be a challenge? So that's one question. Then the other one is, will his Malay be a problem? Because so far all the ministers speak very good Malay, right? And Chan Chun does speak very good Malay as well, as does Tan Chuan Jin, I think. So will his language abilities be a problem, Mandarin or Malay? I don't know what his language abilities are actually, to be honest.
Well, I did see Minister Lawrence Wong participate in a Channel 8 talk show on the budget. So I think it was his
Good
choice to
enough?
practice. It was good enough. It was acceptable.
Not on your
Probably
level. Yeah,
not as
but
fluent
good
as
enough,
Minister Ong Kang, yeah, but good enough. And language is something that you can always practice on
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't see that as a big issue.
Yeah, I agree. And even Malay, I think, which I think is not a criteria, right? But it's a very good language to have. If
Good
you're the
thing
Prime
to
Minister
have.
in Singapore, it's something that you can quite easily pick up and train for as well. So yeah, I don't think the language issue is too big of a deal. I mean, it's an ad, but I don't think it's a deal breaker or anything. So do you think it's a coincidence that the new leader of the 4G team holds a portfolio as the finance minister? Well, yes, the finance minister is one of the big five, but not all finance ministers go on to be prime ministers, right? There have been many prominent ones, right? Including SM Tharman, right? Or even Heng Swee Keat, right? Who didn't go on to be prime minister. So yes, the cabinet position tells us something, but it doesn't tell us everything. Sophia Kra's follow-up was how has the soul searching process happened? What has changed in the last couple of years? As I said, I haven't really seen that change. In
Actually,
terms of
I would differ.
opening up. Yeah, carry on.
So actually, I would say in terms of some progressive social policies wise, they have made significant moves.
Such as
in two areas. So number one, last year there was the Singapore Green Plan, and they were talking a lot about moving Singapore towards carbon neutrality, moving towards a greener Singapore, and so that I think would appeal to a lot of environmentalists amongst the young and people who care about climate change and things like that. Number two is last year they designated Singapore as the Year of the Woman, and this year they put out a white paper on women's development in Singapore, and they also made a whole wide range of changes, significant changes to the treatment of sexual assault victims and to shift some policies to strengthen women's position in all areas, right, in Singapore society.
Yeah.
So I think those two policies are significant substantive changes which they have addressed from 2020.
No, I agree with that, but I don't think that. So they have done that, but I don't think that reflects significant changes because those things were never critical to the PAP's legitimacy, or challenges in those areas were never gonna be challenging to the PAP's legitimacy, right? So maybe to see whether there has been really substantive ideological movements, right? Whether race and religion, I think, is one. The other one is the treatment of the opposition, right? So and then we will see in the next 5 years what happens also. Yeah. So
I think So you're right that these two topics on environment and on women's issues are not really biting at PAP's core ideologies, right? But I think there are substantive enough changes that they will appeal to voters on the margin.
Agreed. Yes, I agree.
They will appeal to voters on the margin that could be thinking about, well, voting for Workers' Party, but hey, PAP has made some changes in all these areas. and so I might consider voting for.
I
to
agree with
that
that.
extent,
Professor Terence Lee asked, are we sharing? So him and I, we co-authored an article which will be published soon about PAP and when does PAP or government substantively change. So if you want, Prof. Lee, I can send you a request and you can join this conversation as well. We'll make it a political science conversation. Oh, Terence Tan from the WP is here as well. So I'll invite him as well. And then we'll see. It's just a lepak session essentially. And anybody else as well who wants to come on. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them as well. All right. So when is going to be the next election, Elvin?
I actually think that it will be probably 2025. I think if we are going to have a cabinet reshuffle, we should give the 4G leadership some time to implement the policies that they want to have these policies show some fruits, and they need maybe 1 or 2 years, right, for the policies to be implemented to show fruits.
Yeah. So I think that ideally should be the case as well. But I think it depends on how risk averse or not risk averse they are. But when PM Go took over in 1990, there was a general election in 1991. When PM Lee took over in 2004, there was a general election in 2006. And the PAP is also quite big on this is the mandate that the new Prime Minister needs, right? Which to some extent makes sense. If there's a new Prime Minister, I think it does make sense, right? Because it tells us how popular that Prime Minister is with the people. So if they are feeling really adventurous, they may want to do that. But it's also strange if they were to do it. First of all, we don't know when Minister Lawrence Wong will be the PM, right? And second of all, if it's only 1 year after he becomes PM and is the year that the GST increase also takes place, and we don't know what the court case with Pritam, how that will be, and how Pritam and Faisal, and then how the public will react to that, right? So, so it's quite a strange. If they did it next year or what, it'll be quite a strange move.
Yeah, I think it will definitely be a bit risk-taking if it's too early. So if you would ask me if I would advise PAP on how the timing of things, I would say cabinet reshuffle now. Year-end PAP CC elections, have a new CC. In 2023, you have presidential elections. 2024, you have Lawrence Wong become the Prime Minister. And 2025, you have the federal elections.
Oh,
That is if you want the Prime Minister transition to be before the elections.
So that will be your advice. So my advice will be the first few the same, but don't let PM Lee take over, lead the team for the next election.
Okay.
And then hand over almost immediately, right? And then give, or like 1 year or what, and then give him 4 years, to come into his own. Right?
So have elections in 2025 with PM Lee still.
Yeah, or 2024. Yeah, or 2024 with PM Lee still there, right? Because, by the way, we are not paid by the PAP or anything.
We are just guessing.
We also don't know whether they are listening or what. But if they are, I think this is what I would say, right? So it would make more sense to do that. And also, if they are listening, I would say that I do feel that there is more of an appetite for this fairness and justice thing, and I do think that's something that the 4G especially, but the 3G also need to really bear in mind that I don't think they can get away with harshness towards the opposition, and even not just the opposition, critics in society, right, as they used to in the past. It could be because of society is changing, or it could be also because they are not seen, like Lee Kuan Yew had a certain aura to him that can let him get away with a lot of these things, right? And it remains to be seen whether the 4G has that as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you do not have,
think,
yeah.
I think if there's some criticism or pushback or some basically use of stick against opposition, I think people would expect that as a normal course of politics. But if that stick is too big of a stick, if the PAP comes down too harsh, it seems as disproportionate to whatever the opposition transgressions may be. The disproportionate maneuver will probably not be seen well by the current public, because the masses, Singapore masses now are much more educated. They are much more well connected on social media. There's a lot. I think memes can go viral very easily, and you know when memes go viral, the people can always read into the subtext.
Yeah, I mean, the best example, GE 2020, like Hing's Wicket's East Coast plan going viral and people just cutting the video, right? And I think that damaged him irreversibly. I mean, I don't think he could have become PM after that and after the results as well. So yeah, so hopefully they do listen to this and heed our suggestions, right? Anything else you wanted to say, Elvin?
No, nothing. I should give the opportunity to other people to speak.
Okay. Thank you so much, Elvin.
Yeah.
I'll just wrap up the session for a couple of minutes. Unless there's somebody who wants to come on. If you want to come on, you just send me a request and then I'll accept you. Otherwise, I'll just wrap up the session and maybe take a couple of questions. So would the TC Kosong plan win East Coast? So this you're referring to Dr. Maliki's session online, the TO online or whatever it was online. I mean, there are so many moving parts, right? Because one of the things that was promised to East Coast voters was that the next Prime Minister would be, they would be voting for the next Prime Minister, right? So what happens then in the next election? So they probably would have to send an important enough figure as well, or depending on what is DPM Hing's next cabinet position. You're talking about Tesi, yeah. So Nicole's, yeah. Okay. So I'll get to that. That's her favorite drink, right? And I think there's a lot of moving parts there, and we'll see what happens. But it really depends on the WP team. I think will be a strong team. It depends on what is the team that the PAP chooses to send, and who is the heavyweight minister there, and DPM Hing, how heavyweight of a minister will he be in the next election, as in the next cabinet, and therefore in the next election. So I think it does matter. Yeah, so East Coast plan, there's somebody who asked what's the East Coast plan. Well, yeah, who knows what the East Coast plan was, but the East Coast plan became viral because of what the DPM Hing's mistake, I would say, when he was speaking during it seemed like he was it seemed like he was woefully unprepared for that hustings during nomination day. All right, so if there is nobody who would like to come on, final call, I'll just end off in a while. And I just wanted to see, basically there are four main issues, right, that I would look out for. So one is, when is the next GE, right? And other than when Minister Lawrence Wong is going to take over as PM, and then when is the next GE, and who leads the next? Are they going to do the transition? They're going to do the handover before the GE, or are they going to do it after the GE, right? So do you think that the GRC Lawrence Wong is assigned to will change given his new position, or has the PAP learned their lesson with DPM Hing's reassignment at GE 2020? So I don't know what is the lesson, because that was already a strange move to begin with, DPM Hing moving over from Tampines to East Coast. there's probably, and maybe time will tell, probably there's something more to that, because that was quite a strange move to begin with. But it is normal that the PAP, the prime ministerial candidate, it is normal that they would remain in a stronghold of theirs, right? And I don't see that will happen, or that will change. So they would probably, Lawrence Wong would be in a GRC that is much more winnable than East Coast. I think that is pretty much certain. Would a GE happen before the presidential election? I mean, it's unlikely, but I don't have any inside information or anything. Do you see them scrapping GRCs altogether? No, I mean, they will not scrap the GRCs, of course. Would they shrink them to 3-member constituencies? I hope so. I hope they would, because the constitution it's 3 to 6, right? Persons in a GRC. So I do hope that they would do that. Now, this is an interesting question by Trevor. Would recapturing Sengkang be a top priority of Lawrence? I don't see why it should. And in fact, the move to Amrin's and Ng Chee Ming's moving out of Sengkang, right, also tells us that probably Sengkang is not the utmost priority. I was a bit surprised that Amrin and Ng Chee Ming are not going to stay there and contest there, and they've sent in a new team. So I don't think recapturing Sengkang would be a top priority, or at least at the moment, from the movements, I do not see it being a top priority in the first place. Okay, so the first thing, as I said before I answered the questions, the first thing is when the GE happens. The second thing is what happens to the quote unquote the losers, right? Ong Ye Kung, Chan Chun Sing, right? And I think a lot the examples of other countries, it's very common that regimes fall because of elite splits. So, and I think the PAP knows this very, very well, better than I do. So they would try their very best to ensure that this doesn't happen. And it's extremely important to get Chan Chun Sing and Ong Ye Kung really, really sold on the idea as well, or at least to the extent that it's possible. And it could include, it could mean giving them really important positions in the next cabinet, right? So just that they stay on side, right? So what happens to PM Lee? I think he's going to be a senior minister in the next cabinet. And as I said earlier, I think many Singaporeans probably would welcome that as well. It does seem to me from my own interactions, Singaporeans have a far better perception of the 3G than 4G, and therefore they would appreciate some stability. So the second point is what happens to the losers. I think this is a crucial point, and somebody may say, oh, but they never wanted the PM role in the first place. They wanted it, right? If any of the three didn't want, right, they would have just said it long ago that I didn't want to be PM. And by the way, I have no problems with them wanting to be PM as well. I think it's a good thing. I think any politician worth their salt should want to be PM. But of course, there will be inevitably disappointment and so on. So it's important to get them on side and on board. So the third point is the 3G in 4G. As I said, PM Lee probably would stay on. I think Minister Shan probably would stay on as well, probably as DPM as well. And the final point that I wanted to mention was the direction, the change in direction on the two issues I talked about, where it's a bit more costly ideologically for them, where they have to move more significantly, right? Such as race and religion, and have more openness and be kinder or less aggressive or less draconian to the opposition. And I think these are the four main issues that I think we should look out for. I'm definitely looking out for. So we'll see how. All right, everyone. It's been 66 minutes, so I'll just end this here. And thank you for joining for this impromptu session. So I'll see you guys. I don't have a next episode planned anytime soon, but hopefully somewhere in May or June. All right. Bye bye. You can say bye bye as well. Bye bye, everybody.
Dadah. Dadah.